My name is Jeff Patterson, Chief Executive Officer of the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority. And today we're going to have a community meeting to discuss a grant that CMHA received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a planning grant. And that planning grant is for us to look at how we can make improvements and really look at our Woodhill estates and how we can look at doing some things to make improvements over time, as well as integrate a little bit better within the community, as well as make sure that some of the assets we have can be shared with others, and some of the assets that others have can also be shared with us at this property. So this is more of an envisioning process. We're not walking out of here tonight with the plan and say, okay, we got it. This is the start of a process, a lengthy process with a lot of dialogue. All opinions will be respected, despite the fact that there may be some that are a little bit different. But the difference is our strength, and that's what makes Cleveland Cleveland. We have to be able to listen and have diverse opinions, all with the goal of providing something that's going to be good for everyone that's involved. So I see a lot of folks here tonight. I really do appreciate you guys taking an opportunity to come out this evening. I know that there's a lot of stuff that's going on, but this is very important. This is, I think, an opportunity for the City of Cleveland as well as CMHA to transform a community. And it's not a community that's not already having a lot of good things, exciting things that are going on. We had a very good partners meeting earlier today where we spoke with a lot of the different partners that are doing things in this community, and they share some ideas. Our second step is to start with the community and hear some of the things in terms of what folks would like to see. So one of the things we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to break folks into some groups, and we're going to break you into 3 groups. One is going to be about people and what the people in this community are looking for. The second group is going to be neighborhood and how we want our neighborhoods to look. And the third is going to be housing. Those are the same things that everyone else has been discussing. We want to get people's opinions about those things. And this won't, again, be the first time that we ask those questions. We'll continue to ask those questions. This is a 2-year planning grant. So we have a lot of time to really sit down and go from what color, what type of units we like to see, what type of floors we like to see, to what color paint we want on the walls. Do we want accent walls or non-accent walls? To who's going to live here, or how should we do this? So those are the things we're going to need a lot of valuable input on. So what I'm going to do at this point is, because as I mentioned, this is not just a CMHA initiative. This is also an initiative that is a part of what the City of Cleveland is doing. And this ward is fortunate to have what I believe to be a very good, strong council person. So at this time, I'm going to ask Councilman Blaine Griffin to come forward and say a few words. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. First of all, I want to give Director CEO Patterson and all his team a round of applause. This is a very important grant that you're doing, so I'll give you a round of applause. A lot of people don't know this, but this is one of 6 planning grants that were awarded out of 29 sites that competed for this throughout the country. And I believe in this region, it's only one of 2 that were actually assigned to Cleveland. So this is a very, very important planning process. I'm happy to see a lot of the stakeholders in the area of Ward 6 and in this footprint that's going to really be here to be a part of this. As you'll see when the presentation goes forward, this project is not just about the estates. There's about, I believe, 25 acres of Woodhill estates, and I'm learning more about it as I go. But this is about the adjacent areas. So we have a lot of street club presidents and other leaders, like clergy and others throughout the region that are here to be a part of this process, not just about the estates, but in the surrounding area. This is about putting together a model that would deconcentrate poverty in the city of Cleveland. The way that the city of Cleveland was developed in the early 1900s and the mid 1900s was not built on an equity model. It was built upon redlining. It was built upon putting enclaves of people who were impoverished in certain areas, and it was not built in a structurally, it was built around structural racism. So now we have an opportunity to really look at this project and transform the entire footprint that we're doing in this entire area. I'm passionate about this area, and I'll tell you just two small stories before I take my seat. I'm passionate about this because I live right up the street on Larchmere. I tell people that my gas bill says Woodland, but Larchmere, I guess somewhere along the way, somebody decided to make a change. But I really consider myself that I live on Woodland for the last 20 plus years and worked at East End Neighborhood House for several years before then. And the reason I tell you that is because I told Director Patterson this before, and I told the audience earlier this morning. My sons grew up with a lot of the children. I have 3 sons that I raised in this neighborhood, and they all went to school at A.G. Bell with a lot of the kids from what we affectionately call in this area Morris Black. And what I always recognize is what my son came home and told me one day when he came to Morris Black to come down here and hang out with his best friend Lamar, who lives right across the street. He said, you know, Pops, he said, we just had a water balloon fight, and we just basically just, you know, went down there, and he said, I haven't felt that much community love that I felt being in the estates. And that's the kind of love that this community has, that's really connected with each other, that really has a family history. You have several families that live in these properties in the adjacent area that really love this community. So now we have the opportunity to really invest in this area and have the type of investment and put together the type of plan so that this community gets what it deserves, because there has been disinvestment and neglect in trying to make sure that we work in areas like this for a long time. So I thank CMHA and Director Patterson for making this the focal point. I also have had the opportunity to see sites that Telesis has done, where it's been built around people, built in an equitable model. And I tell people, as we look at these type of projects, it reminds me of a story that a taxi cab driver said to me when I was going to view a site, myself and Ms. Marilyn Burns, who's one of your resident leaders and your precinct committee person in this area. And one of the things that the taxi driver said as we rolled past a nice, beautiful, shiny development in East Point, Georgia, he said, sir, you see that nice new park and that nice new development and that nice swimming pool there? He said, well, this is the area I grew up in, and it used to be the projects. And he said, I want to let you know that that's not for us. And I couldn't understand why he said that to me until it dawned on me what he felt was that he felt he was displaced. We don't want to put a nice, shiny new neighborhood and displace people that have been here all their life and sacrificed in order to make this community great. So that's why you're here today. You're here to make sure you're part of the planning process, that you're engaged, that we make sure that we tell everybody what we want to see, and that we hold everybody accountable, because this is a great community. When I'm talking to a person that's in a distressed situation, I don't say, you know, you really look bad. You're not going to make it. What I do is I go in there and I tell them, we have an opportunity. You're going to turn this around. You look good today. Remember what you come from. You come from good stuff and heritage. So that's why I'm here today to tell you that this is one of the most exciting projects that we have the opportunity to do, not just in Ward 6, but the city of Cleveland. We have a lot of investment that's going along this area with the Thrive 105-93 plan. This is one of the mayor's areas of focus around the transformation initiative, where we're trying to get philanthropic and private dollars to come and invest in distressed areas like this. This is an area where we're really working on a transportation model. We're less than a mile away from where the biggest job growth that we've seen in the city of Cleveland history, and the second largest employer in the state of Ohio. So I want us to look at this with inspiration. I want us to make sure that we talk to all of the neighbors and tell the story about what we have the opportunity to do. But most and importantly, I want to make sure that we plant trees under whose shade many of us may never sit, and that's the young people in this neighborhood that can benefit from something very special. So thank you for allowing me the time to come talk to you today. Director Patterson, I'm all in. As I told you earlier, if I got to come lay a brick, rake leaves, tear down something or build up something, or whether I just need to get somewhere and tell the powers that be that you need to embrace this project, I'm all in. And thank you, sir, for your leadership on this project. Have a good one.
So we're gonna switch slogans for the councilman. You know, all in was for the Cavs last year. So now what's it for the Cavs this year? Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. It's gonna take a lot tomorrow. So it's gonna take a lot tomorrow. So if anybody got a consistent outside shot that they can take, you know, I think Dan Gilbert may sign you to a contract for one day. I want to keep this kind of moving along because I know we have a lot of things that we want to discuss. But I do want to make sure I acknowledge the presence of our CMHA chairman, our Board of Commissioners, Mr. Robert Davis, who's with us this afternoon, as well as I think our other commissioner who's also here, Ms. Commissioner Nadine Head, is also here with us today. The CMHA Board of Commissioners oversees the housing authorities. There's 5 of our commissioners. They're volunteers that do an excellent job in providing guidance to CMHA, so I appreciate their support and their leadership in being a part of this initiative. I also want to make sure we acknowledge all of our representatives from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so if you guys wouldn't mind standing for a moment. Just our HUD representatives, both local as well as federal, that are here today. We thank you guys for coming in, and we really appreciate the partnership and look forward to continuing that partnership as we go moving down the path. So with that said, I do want to ask our representatives from Telesis and City Architecture to come forward, and they're going to give us an overview of the project and what we're doing, and then from there, we're going to break into some small groups and have a lot of good dialogue. So I turn it over to you guys.
So good evening, everyone. We really appreciate your coming out. I know it's hard to do during the week. You have a lot going on, and it's a huge commitment on your behalf to really commit to this neighborhood, and it means a lot to us. My name's Laura Lazarus. I'm with Telesis Corporation. We are the planning coordinators along with City Architecture, who's also here. A couple of my colleagues I just want to introduce because you will get to meet them both tonight and in the future, Pamela Lee and Ashley Tucker. And you will be seeing much of them over the next 2 years. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about us, just briefly, because we're not from here, but we have a lot of experience, and we really like working closely with the community. We think it's essential to making a better neighborhood and a better community and helping you achieve what you want to achieve in your community and what that means for you. And for us, that's a dialogue with you and an ability to actually understand what you want and how we can get there. There's always reality, fiscal reality, so figuring out how to do that within those realities, but to make that happen for you. So just briefly about us. We have been around for more than 30 years. We have worked in 27 communities around the country. We have worked with 18 housing authorities. We have worked on large-scale planning developments in other places in connection with HUD dollars, with a program called Hope 6, which you may be familiar with, but in other ways as well. We are committed to the neighborhoods that we work in. We are there for the long term. Our first neighborhood was in Washington, D.C. in the I think in the late 80s, and we are still working there now, looking at how we can revitalize that neighborhood today, because there are different constraints, different considerations. We're in Louisville, Kentucky. We're in Bradenton, Florida. We're in Pennsylvania. We're very familiar with understanding how a specific community works, and for us, really, the key is working in partnership with the residents and the other stakeholders here. So we appreciate the partnership with CMHA and HUD and the council member, and we're going to really want to make sure that we get your voices heard. We are also very experienced in financing. We've probably worked with every kind of affordable housing financing that there is, and thinking about the assets in your neighborhood and how we can build on those, and then what else is needed, and how do we address anything that's a challenge. So tonight is really the very beginning. First, before I do that, I'll just introduce briefly City Architecture. Alex Festa will tell you a little bit more about his firm. They're from Cleveland. They have a lot of planning and architectural experience that they'll bring to this project. Alex will talk to you a little bit about that in a minute. But I just want to reiterate, before I go to here, I think, is that we're at the very beginning of our process. We have not begun to plan. This is kind of the kickoff. So you haven't missed anything. And you're going to be here from the very beginning. We are going to figure out, we're going to look at 3 different areas. We're going to look at housing. What does the housing look like? What does new housing look like? What does rehabbed housing look like? Who is going to live there? What's the density? What's the mix of incomes? But everyone here will have a home here in the neighborhood. In addition, we will be looking at people. So what are some of the, what are the things that people who live at Woodhill need? And what do you already have? And what do you want? And then in addition, we'll be looking at the neighborhood, how you are connected to the greater neighborhood. How do you get to your RTA subway stations? How do you get to the bus? How do you get to work? How do you get to health care? Where do you get your groceries? Is there a way to improve that? Where's daycare? All of those things are things that we're going to talk about. So today's the very beginning of that. We're going to be breaking out into groups and starting to have that dialogue. And we really want to also hear from you about the best way to continue to have the conversation. For some people, it's a community meeting at 5 o'clock. Maybe it's a meeting on Saturdays at 9. Maybe it's smaller work groups in somebody's home. Maybe it's working, meeting at a church. We don't know what that is. We want you to tell us. We also want to know how you want us to communicate with you. What's the best way to get the message out? Is it social media? Is it flyers? Is it phone calls? What is it that, so you know what's going on and what's the best way to talk to you about that. So I'm going to let Alex come up, talk a little bit about city architecture, and then really we're going to split into groups to talk, allow for kind of more conversation about what we're thinking about. So thank you very much again.
Before we go any further and city architects come up, I want to ask if all of the residents that are in the area, because we have a good showing of residents, the stakeholders, the residents, the clergy, if you all can stand up, I want to acknowledge you all. All of you can stand up, please. Stand up. Residents, clergy, all the rest of you. Thank you so much for coming out. I know how much we really work for all you guys to come out, so thank you all for coming out today.
Thank you, Councilman. Well, good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for inviting us. As Laura outlined, city architecture, we have very deep roots in the city of Cleveland. We're approaching our 30th year next year. We've been honored to work with CMHA on a lot of the neighborhood planning initiatives that the Housing Authority has done. So how many of you guys remember Garden Valley? And now what do we call it? Heritage View. And what about Valley View? Tremont Ridge, right? So these are all planning initiatives that led to a revitalization of those neighborhoods. I want to be very clear that, and I want to echo what the councilman, what Mr. Patterson, and what Laura has said. This process is founded on open and honest communication. And it's very important for everyone to understand this is our first community meeting. We wanted to start on the estate. We wanted to get the direct input from the residents that live here, that live in the community, that live in the immediate neighborhood. Because without that understanding, it's outside planning ideas kind of being prescribed onto the residents that live here. And that doesn't work. That's not how we plan. That's not how Telesis plans. And quite frankly, that's not what CMHA wants out of this process. It needs to be a neighborhood plan that is built on the understanding that we get from folks like you, and Laura's absolutely right. We want to understand how we engage better. We want to understand how the types of communication that work for you guys, that are going to get the right folks to the meetings. I'm a very strong believer that we need to engage a full kind of gamut of ages and age ranges for folks to engage in this plan. So we're looking at all the way down to how do we engage with children in the neighborhood, all the way through kind of the full range up to seniors. So we're excited to start the conversation. As Laura mentioned, we're going to break into groups tonight. We're going to keep it very informal. The idea is to have open dialogue, have a conversation, and then please let us know in each one of these 3 stations, what is the best way to reach you guys? Is it a meeting like this? Is it a newsletter? That is where we're going to be the cornerstone of how we move forward. So Laura, Pam, I don't know if you want to go through the 3 components in any more detail or if you want me to kind of go through it quickly. So the choice plan is founded, again, on those three components. That's housing, neighborhood, and people. And what I'd ask you to kind of think about, especially in this early stage, is that housing is pretty easily defined. That's where you live, how you live, what the units need to be, what the residential kind of amenities need to be to support a quality of life, and let's speak frankly, to improve the quality of life in and around this community and this neighborhood. So housing is pretty easily understood. Neighborhood, think about neighborhood as everything beyond Woodhill Estates. Oops. It says low battery. I have 3 children, so I can scream. So think of neighborhood as everything beyond the immediate estate. And think of it as physical connections. So it's sidewalks, it's connections to transit, it's the roadways that are here, it's the green spaces that are here. Think about how those places and spaces can be improved. What I'm dying to hear are where there are ones that work really well and where there are ones that don't work so well or don't work at all. I have a feeling that that list is going to be pretty long based on our understanding of the neighborhood and how people move through it. And then the last piece is people. And I want to commend HUD and others that really focus on weaving these 3 pieces of a plan together, because you can't have a physical plan without also having a conversation about the people that will live and inhabit and use those parks and spaces and places, and ultimately the housing that will get redeveloped there, right? And so this process is really aimed to connect people with place. So if there are services, if there are programs that you currently take advantage of, you currently use, or if there are things that are missing in this neighborhood, or if there's a service on the other side of town that it takes 3 buses and 2 transfers and you have to get on a train in order to get there, let us know what those are, because if there's ways through this planning process that we can start to narrow that gap, that's what the winning kind of plan is. That's the secret to this, is to weave all of these things together into one cohesive plan that then the Housing Authority, with probably the hundreds of partners that are going to be identified over the next 2 years, will then implement together. But it all starts tonight. It all starts with the conversations tonight, so we're all going in the right direction. And we want to make sure that our first steps are ones that are, you're pushing us. You're right there behind us, or you're right there with us, pushing us in the right direction. We don't want to go in the wrong direction. I'll speak frankly on city architecture's behalf. We've done that before. We've made those mistakes. That's why we're here tonight. We want to start with an introduction. You can ask me any question that you want, and I will answer it absolutely truthfully and honestly, because this plan, you will see a lot of me and my colleagues over the next 2 years. And if we can't get to a point where you trust me and I trust you, and we can create that environment of kind of a safe sharing, then this plan is going to be words and drawings on a piece of paper. It's not going to do anybody any good. And so I'm very excited, I'm very honored, I'm very humbled to be here, because this is what gets me up every morning. Like I said, I mentioned, I have 3 children. And I do what I do for a very selfish reason. You want to guess what it is? 3 children. I want my 3 children, I want your 3 children, I want your grandchildren to look at Cleveland in 10, 15, 20 years and go, that's where I want to be. Because that's where I want them. I'm selfish, right? I don't want to get on a plane to go see my kids. I want them to see Cleveland as a viable option. And if it's viable for them, it's viable for everybody. So I thank you guys. I look forward to building the relationship and earning your trust. That's really what this is going to be founded on. So I think that it's best that if we kind of break into the 3 groups, there's stations here. What we'd like to do, let me think. What we'd like to do is, go ahead. No.
I can help?
Sure.
I'll help. Hi. I'm Rachel. I work at CMHA. I'll be working closely with Policis and Alex, amongst all of our other CMHA workers that we are. We are going to break up into 3 groups. Pick a topic that you are interested in. So as has been said already, people, you want to talk about education, supportive services that people need. What do youth need? What do seniors need? Neighborhood, as Alex has described, people will be number 1 over here. Neighborhood is about the neighborhood. Where is the crime at? Where do you see people hanging out on a corner? What streets need to be fixed? There's a big fence with the barbed wire on top.
Right.
Those, if you're interested in neighborhood type things, go over by Laura. Raise your hand. Yep, they're right over there. Lastly is housing. housing is specific to Woodhill Estates, and if you want to bring up other housing in the neighborhood, you can. But what do we want the housing to look like? What do you think we need? Do we need intergenerational housing? Do we need elderly housing? Do we need a high-rise? Do we want new construction? Do we want to renovate? So those types of things. If you're interested in that, go to the housing group. We will spend a half an hour in our groups, and then we will report out. Each group will report out, and Alex will have to do his group, and then we will come back. Mr. Patterson will tell us our next steps. Does that make sense?
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. All right, so let's go ahead and start to break into those groups. Pick a category, and please know that you have a half hour. So if you want to spend a little bit of time at the news
I mean, the people, that's what it's about. And the housing is important, the neighborhoods are important, but if we don't include the people and those things that they identify there, this stuff is not sustainable. And that's what we want to look at. That's probably one of the most key components of this, is to develop something that's going to be sustainable, something that's going to be here not just for the time that we're here, but as for the future generations. So again, I thank you guys for digging deep on that and getting us going. So in terms of next steps, you know, this is the first meeting, not the last. We will be reaching out to people to let people know about other meetings, other places where we could go. We're open to suggestions. You know, at some point, you know, for some folks, when we did another development in this area not too long ago, there were a lot of people who had not had an opportunity to see some of the other developments that CMHA has done. So they looked and said, okay, well, is that what you guys are doing? Where housing today is a lot different. And there's a lot different options. So we will probably at some point, you know, provide an opportunity for folks in the community to get an opportunity to go see some different sites that CMHA has done and different sites that other folks have done, to try to get a baseline and an idea of what you would like to see at this site. You know, whether it be townhomes, whether it be apartment buildings, whether it be intergenerational housing, whether it be housing for family unification, what have you. There's so many different types of options. So we're going to encourage that. So if you have not provided your contact information, please do so before you leave, because we do want to kind of put together an email list so we could give people updates on this process, let people know what's going to be happening as we move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to the councilman. He's going to close us out.
Thank you, CEO Harrison. First of all, thanks everybody for coming out today. I really know that it was a lot of people that came out on short notice, and I hear everybody's concern. I do want to have a couple of tasks that I'm going to ask CMHA to do. I've learned that social media and technology is critical. I think it would be nice if a group like this had a Facebook page or some type of Twitter account that people can always stay in touch and see where the project is going, what meetings are upcoming. So there's a way to do groups so that we can actually make sure we stay in touch and I know you got a lot of people's email address, so I would hope that maybe the CMHA staff and Telus' team and City Architecture can look at how we can put together some kind of virtual meeting place where people can actually, stay engaged, and how we can actually spread the word. And I know we failed to mention it, and I do know that we have maps up here, but one of the things that I think that you guys should know, and I want to make sure that I underscore this, is that this is not just about the estates. This is not just about the 25 acres that are here. This project goes roughly from MLK over to Stokes Boulevard, all the way down to Woodhill, all the way over to the small part of the Fairfax area, all the way over here to Buckeye, and all the way up to MLK. So there's a lot of territory here. There's St. Luke's Point that's doing a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on with two schools, Harvey Rice and Sunbeam. We've also visited with Judy Willard and Miss Burns and myself, the purpose-built neighborhoods, where we're looking at Cleveland Foundation that's really working on putting a lot of emphasis around education in this area. So please don't think that this is just about CMHA and the estates. We have a very rare opportunity to transform this area. And I want to just tell everybody that it's something when, Miss Marilyn and I heard Ernest and other people say this quite often, is that we need to get more people involved. Here's what I want you to go back and tell the people in your neighborhood. If you are not in a room helping to prepare the meal, then you are part of the menu. If you are not here helping to make this happen, then that means that you're going to be, not thought of when this develops. Because somebody's going to develop this area. Somebody's going to come in here and make some things happen, because right now the hot thing, and I'm telling you, I meet with developers and other people every day, they're coming in on a regular basis saying, we want to build here. They're itching to build here because people can't go, it's too far to go out to Medina and Lake County and some of these other places. So more people are trying to come, especially young professionals, are trying to come to this footprint. Somebody's going to benefit off of this development. I want it to be you. So I'll end with a very, I try to be humorous once in a while, and it was a joke that I once heard, and it was about a person, some of the pastors might have heard this before, but it was about a family that had a big exotic bird. This bird was about 7 feet tall. It was a gold bird. It had a big, long wingspan, and somebody gave the bird a gift to their parents. Well, somehow the parents ate the bird. So the son and the family that gave the parents that bird said, well, why did why would you eat that bird? That was an expensive bird. It could speak multiple languages. It's full of gold. It's a rare bird. It's a beautiful bird. Why would you eat that bird? And the parents told the son and the children, well, somebody should have said something. So what I guess I'm trying to tell you is we have an opportunity to build a nice, big, shiny, great community. I'm not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. And we have a chance to build something great. But if we don't tell people, then what they're going to do is do what all y'all said. They're going to disrespect it. They're not going to cherish it the way that they want to. If they don't help build it and tell the story about what we're trying to do, we won't benefit the way that we need to. So I'm asking you all to really stay engaged, get more people to come out. I'm going to continue to go out and work with people. I do. Ms. Marilyn gives me my marching orders every week. She's one of the people that stay in my ear. I do have a community meeting every second Tuesday of the month right here at Morningstar Church, and it's a Ward Club community meeting. So basically, I try to bring resources and I try to bring people that can give us information. And this is going to be at the top of the agenda on a regular basis because, ladies and gentlemen, as I close, this is going to be hard work. I don't want anybody to have a perception that this is going to be easy. Director Patterson and my CEO Patterson and myself are going to have our work cut out for us, going to tell people why it's important to invest in this once we put the plan together. It's not going to happen overnight. We didn't get this way overnight. We're not going to fix this overnight. This is going to be a long, engaging process. But at the end of the day, as I said earlier, future generations can benefit from this. And as Director Patterson said, some of these young babies that we see here are not going to be saying, how do we get out of here And how do we run to other neighborhoods and other communities? They'll be saying, I was a part of something special, and we built something great in the Woodhill footprint. So I'd like to thank you all for your caring, for coming out. I'd like to make sure that we always utilize the passage. Thank you for all of the caring and concern that you all have. But please, by all means, stay engaged. And thank you, CEO Patterson and your team for putting this project together.